What is going on, Macro Perspective peeps? Seamus and Marcos back with another episode. We have an awesome guest today, a referral from Kayla Burrows. And what we have here is Christopher Tansey, and he is from Saraset Health. And what I'm looking forward to about this conversation, we got connected because he has a protocol technology around brain health that's super awesome. I think Marcos and I've been looking forward to this. But Chris, I'll let you introduce yourself, like little
Yep.
elevator pitch, and then we'll just start kind of asking questions. I think this is going to be a masterclass in something that I don't think Marcos and I probably have really experienced much, or
Yeah.
don't really, like, we're not in the world in every single day. So I think we're going to be really curious and pique a lot of curiosities today.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on your podcast, Marcos and Seamus. Really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to talk about brain health and educate just people that I'm even an option. It's just such an honor to walk alongside so many people that are hurting and to make a difference in their life, have the technology make a difference in their life so that they can show up more effectively in their personal and professional relationships. So my name's Christopher Tansey. I'm the owner of Cereset Costa Mesa. It's a cutting edge neurotechnology that uses audio feedback to help the brain self-regulate. So I would say everything begins with your brain, your thoughts, your emotions, and your actions, and then it transcends down to your body.
Yeah.
And if your brain gets stuck, then your body's not going to be running on optimal performance. And so it's going to impact about 5 key categories. That's energy, that's mood, that like an anxiety, depression. That's how you cope with and respond to stress. That's how you sleep, getting to sleep, staying asleep, waking up, feeling rested, and your focus. Learning, problem solving, memory, focus, it kind of falls all in that same bucket. And so thank goodness for the non-invasive technology
Yeah.
with mirroring, acoustic mirroring with Saraset to help gain your brain some of its flexibility back to help with some of those things all organically with no use of medication.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
I think Marcos and I are gonna try to unpack this. Before we even try to unpack it, I was
Yeah.
listening to a little thing today. It was a Jubilee Health. It was Brian Johnson, who's like the long don't die guy. He's
Uh-huh.
probably super popular. Someone made a great call there, like, we could try to do this whole biohacking your health thing. We could do this whole thing of like taking the right optimization protocols, supplements, medications, nutraceuticals, exercise, things like that. But if you don't have your brain, man, really it's kind of hard. And I feel like the brain is this like frontier kind of like space in the ocean where it's like it's still unrecognizable. Like it's still, we don't really know what we're doing.
Yes.
We try our best. You know, for example, we could do a heart transplant. We could do a liver transplant. If we do a brain transplant, like, is that even Christopher to say? Like, so I feel like the brain is so. I feel like it's still so like complex and so like so unsolved. Like, you know what I'm
Yes.
saying?
Yes.
What's your take on like the brain itself first and foremost before we get into the help you're doing with it?
Well, everything stems from the brain. Like I said, what you think, feel, and do, your thoughts and your emotions, your actions. So I see a lot of people, like you said, go to supplements, which are key. Everybody needs their vitamin D and C and all the things. They self-support chemically. They do meditation, which is great. Talk therapy. That's another great thing. Some people need certain things in their life, like medication. Those are just modalities that are recognizable. Chiropractic, acupuncture, hyperbaric, blood ozone. A lot of great things that are going to support you chemically and emotionally, but not electrically in your brain. And that's what I deal with. That's what the technology measures. And in Cereset, I don't treat, cure, heal, or diagnose any symptom, illness, disease. The Cereset's more about the technology releasing stuck stress and the brain's way of recovering from it, so that it can support overall brain health and function. As human beings, we were never meant to stay stuck. We were meant to go to sympathetic, parasympathetic in our brain, but not stay stuck there. And once we stay stuck, again, our body's not going to be running on optimal performance, and it's going to impact those 5 key categories I first told you about.
Yeah, let's hang on to this here for a little bit. I think that's the thing about like a dynamic brain and like a dynamic nervous system, right? Usually it's parasympathetic, rest and digest is simply that.
Yeah.
Sympathetic, which is like, focus, drive, and fight or flight. I think we still need some sympathetic and just day to day focus, drive things. But when you say stuck, like, how come these patterns happen in people? How do these patterns, come up? How do they stay stuck in the patterns? And then how does that affect the brain, maybe like negatively?
Yeah, well, and before I answer that, I want to kind of go back around
Yeah,
um, to what you said, before, and people try a lot of different things, and
yeah,
it's not that it doesn't work, it's
yeah,
that the brain can't receive it because it's stuck, and that your brain works quicker than your conscious mind. The brain works in about 4 milliseconds. Your conscious mind works in a second and a half. So yeah. So if your brain's calling the shots from, like, let's say, trauma all the way back
hmm,
to childhood, and usually it's the third or fourth thing, and then you had some concussions, emotional
hmm,
trauma, family dysfunction, concussion, and then let's say you had COVID or just a stressful loss. Usually it's the third or fourth thing where the brain rhythms can get stuck like a thermostat,
yeah,
and then you're just, people are wondering why they're stuck, and it's accumulated stress. It's like a cup that kind of keeps on brewing, and the brain will fix itself, for people that are younger. But there comes a time where you get so much mileage on your vehicle, and it doesn't work as well. And if you don't take care of it. So as Saraset's grown, I always preach, don't be reactive for your brain health, be proactive for your brain health. Start
yeah,
there first instead of here last. And when Cereset was really brand new, I had a lot of people where it'd be like I was the last ditch effort hope for them to get help.
yeah.
They tried a lot of things, and now I'm beginning to see more people, as it begins to become more well known, be proactive for their brain health. Even after that, they're out of the frying pan and they got their brain back.
Yeah. Man, that's so cool. I love that you're bringing in how the nervous system might regulate, and how it might be operating because it was kind of stuck from maybe like an emotional trauma, stressful
Yeah.
trauma, a physical one, whether it be like a an accident, like some TB, yeah, some TBI, some traumatic brain injury. So I would probably say like the Saraset protocols probably work with a lot of folks that are have dealt with like a lot of high trauma, right? Maybe
Yeah.
both emotional and physical. Like, would you say that Sarasota is probably really solid, like in like a military application or something like that?
So I would say it like this. So 3 reasons why people come see me would be like a physical trauma,
Yeah.
like a concussion or traumatic brain injury, a sports injury, a fall, even a birth trauma. People don't realize that. Where I've
Mm.
worked on birth trauma, that was me. That was me as a
Oh,
kid. I had the umbilical cord wrapped around my neck.
wow.
And yeah, or even just a premature birth or an emotional trauma like a loss of a loved one, or seeing a traumatic event, or going through trauma as a kid, or just the regular business professional, pedal to the metal chronic stress, like running in an overactivated fight or flight, like using adrenaline like a drug.
Yeah.
Like picture driving your car with only a gas pedal.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're gonna burn, crash and burn, or and then the other way, picture it only driving a brake versus a balanced brain. You drive it like a normal car. So
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I kind of want to harp on this thing.
yeah,
I know you've told me your story before, but like,
yeah,
how did you get into this like whole brain support?
yeah. So gosh, my just to touch base a little bit on it, my dad, 2008, he had a tragic accident. My dad was a retired pastor, and both him and my mom's a doctorate in psychology, and both of them were on a business trip, and a robber robbed them in the Caribbean. They left their window open to get some breeze, just like Orange County. Guy came in
Yeah.
a mask and had my dad's laptop and wallet, and my dad protected my mom. The guy latched onto the air conditioning units, and my dad fell 4 story. That began a long journey of healing for my dad, and it took him about 5 modalities to get his life back, with 5 pain meds, EMDR therapy, myofascial tissue massage to reset his pelvic floor, 80 hyperbaric, and then Cereset. But it was brainwave optimization back in the day, before it became a Cereset model. Technology's just gotten better. And then so I came along and helped grow the business, but I had my own past journey with brain surgery 25 years ago, back in 98. So, gosh, and there was nothing like this out. No technology to help brain. It was basically medication and talk therapy. And so my personal struggles didn't happen until about my senior year. I was an athlete, basketball player in high school. And then I started to have all these anxiety, focus, and sleep issues. But again, medication and talk therapy. So have you heard of the Amen clinics?
I have. I
Yeah, Dr.
have,
Daniel
but I'm
Amen.
blanking on which Amen it is.
It's Dr. Daniel Amen in the Amen
That
clinic.
one, yeah.
Yeah. So, I went over 98 and, to get a brain spec scan. And they found that there was no electrical activity in this left part of my frontal temporal lobe. And that's
No
the
way.
reason why I was having a lot of those issues. So come full circle, got an MRI. I had significant brain surgery. And I had, instead of a fenestration or a shunt put in, a fenestration window with medication to help stabilize. And I lived like that. All the symptoms disappeared. It was gone. Medication stabilized. I had a great career in computer networking until I came over to run this business. Except, there was more. I didn't want to be on the medication going on up into my 40s. So I was like,
Yeah.
is there another way besides diet, supplements, and hot yoga to get my brain back and help me show up more effectively?
Yeah.
And so I retrained my brain underneath brainwave optimization and Cereset. I did both. And just so you know, brainwave optimization is just the legacy technology. It's the same thing. It's just gotten
Yeah.
better. That Saraset is. Yeah. And I know this is the long version, but this is just such a cool story. It took me about 5 years for me I chose to work with my doctors to be off my medications. And then after I'd retrained my brain through the Cereset model, I went back over to Dr. Amen in 2015, 10 years ago, and got another spec scan because I wanted to see, hey, where's my brain at? They said my brain had healed itself from the work I had done over here by training my brain, and I went literally when I could work, when I was in a great place, to begin to not be on that medication. Today, I'm about 98% off, I'd say, with diet, supplements, and hot yoga. I was on 4 medications, and for what the medications did and stabilized me, they caused 1 or 2 other things. And so it's nice that there's another option for people to get help so that they can show up with no use of medication, and that's the cool thing. That's the cool takeaway. And and here I am, come full circle. You asked how I got into this. I'm just using what my dad's story was, but my story as well. And it's just such an honor to walk alongside of so many people, because I was that stuck client, and I'm just using my own personal struggles as a mission to help other people.
Thanks for sharing the story of that. And I know I had to step out for a second to handle something, but I caught the end here. And I do have a question
Yeah.
with the protocol and the ability for, because you're mentioning like this frontal lobe activity not being there. Is this like not saying like a treated thing? Has it allowed for more activity and engagement from that lobe, or was that based off of the procedure first that then activated, and this has helped kind of keep balance for you?
Yeah. And so the way I would describe that, I have to stay in my lane, obviously, because I don't treat, cure, heal, or diagnose anything, but I'd say I have a special space for people that genetically have a chemical imbalance due to one reason or another, and also an electrical imbalance due to physical, emotional trauma or chronic stress. And sometimes I'm the missing link, where people use acoustic mirroring to help mirror that thing back, mirror it back to balance. And other times, it's a combination of things. But I'd say I just have a space for both. And I'm grateful that I don't have to, for myself, it's not everybody's story and journey, have to be on the medication anymore. I can't, I'm not a doctor or therapist. Again, everything's always done in accordance with people's doctors. That was just my journey, but I would say for somebody that has a traumatic brain injury or an emotional trauma, it's like the invisible wound. You could never tell that about me. And then I see many people that go through that, and they just you don't know how they're doing on the inside. They could have the best poker face on the outside, and they're struggling on the inside to get the help. And I'm so grateful that there's just more options for services like what I provide. I'm still the best kept secret. Does that answer your question, or kind of?
Yeah. Like it's funny because it's like the more I hear additional therapies that are again not intended to treat, diagnose, blah blah, blah, as like the disclaimer has
Right.
generally has profound benefits for a lot of individuals. And again, like for the right person, it may be 10x better, and for the other people, it might only be like 1.5, right? Like it's hard
Right.
to say exactly how much this particular therapy is going to result in improvements. There's definitely some, no matter what, but to the extent of whether or not it's like the missing link for you, it's generally going to be a little bit varied.
Well, and that's that to your point, that is why we're not just gauging improvement off subjective feedback. A lot of modalities out there will, it's like, how do you feel? Which is great, but that's why we're doing an intensive intake and asking questions and really qualifying them and setting expectations, and then going through and creating goals and then quantifiable numbers, and then actually taking the graphs off the frontal poles or the emotional state and the temporal lobes or the stress state, and and then checking in with subjective feedback as they go through the first 5 sessions, and then doing comparative graphs on the back end. And it's always great when all that matches up and with the subjective feedback. But to your point, sometimes people, they tried the backwards route where they did things for their body and they missed their brain, and they spent all this money here. And it's not that it didn't work, it's that their brain couldn't receive it. And then now that they got their flexibility back with after Cereset, they can go back and do some of those things, maybe not as much, and their brain could receive it better, and that's the takeaway. And a lot of my more difficult clients will be on a lot of medications, or they'll have a lot of prior concussions all the way back to childhood, or they'll be going through like some chronic illness or autoimmune and still figuring out how to manage that. They will have like trauma not processed by a therapist yet, or they would be in like major life renegotiations, like divorce, bankruptcy, financial, litigation, business partners, job transition, caregiver, loss of loved one. I mean, all the major things that's going to cause stress. And if you got one or all of them going on, they are going to be a longer term client. And so sometimes I'm like, to your point, I'm the missing link. And sometimes it is a collective effort with, Western Eastern medicine, or even like a naturopathic with a trauma therapist, and where sometimes but I try to read that on the front end when I do the initial assessment or the initial valuation for somebody.
Yeah, it's I wrestle with this personally a lot. Not brain stuff, but like sometimes in the objective sense, you can show people how much they've improved, but if they don't feel it, especially like in mine and Seamus's, like in health coaching land, right? They're
Yes.
like you can show them like you're down 20 pounds or this, that, and the other, but then they don't
Uh-huh.
feel it or have a way to subjectively like gauge that, then they're kind of like, I'm a freaking failure kind of thing. So it's like
Yeah.
interesting to kind of look at it from a brain activity transcription and objective kind of measure thing here, because it's like again you might be hitting all these benchmarks, and I think of it this way too, like my son just got like scored for, they do this they call it map testing, right? So
Uh-huh.
seeing where they rank in a percentile sense for like their age, and honestly I think they overdo it because they do it 3 times a year and it takes up like a week of his like actual learning. And it's like objectively, I was like, sick. My son's improving, but I'm like, I don't know, like, is he though? Like, he's improving and taking tests, but like, if do I feel as though he's improving in other things? And so I'd have to gauge that based on like, maybe his like him subjectively. Like, does he seem more engaged? Is he happier? Is he actually enjoying the learning process? Right, which I know isn't related here, but it's like it's weird to like balance
Uh-huh.
the scientist, right, with the emotional support component and put it all together, which I mean
Yeah.
is really health coaching. I mean, health,
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
because yeah, so
Well, yeah. And I get that, and there's no magic bullets in life, right?
no,
There's no magic bullets, right? We all have our own accountability. And so that's the other beautiful thing about the program. When we're going through on after they've gone through 3 sessions, we give them out some paperwork, some homework, in relation to their goals of energy, mood, sleep, stress, and focus. And these are your steps that are going to support your change in the form of thoughts, behaviors, internal beliefs, habits, and lifestyle. Most people can do them, and I wouldn't do that necessarily for obviously younger kids, but kids that are moving up towards 18, they could probably do that. The latter, I work alongside kids that are 4 and on up, 4 to probably like 13, 14. I probably do that more, have the parents more gauge the improvement and stuff like that. It's where it's harder sometimes, but I get that space. There's a lot that goes into it, but I am a firm believer that there's only so many ways you can go with something because we're made of body, soul, and brain.
True, and like you just said, like the element and aspects of like trauma and trauma work and a lot of these things and talk therapy. And while there's again a lot of people that might benefit from that, would they get an equal amount of benefit from like going and doing the hard work or things that they're avoiding or the avoidance because they're so invested in that talk therapy and talking about their emotions and feelings versus just like suffering through some things, right? Like, I mean, I think there's maybe a lot of stuff that as it pertains to like, certain systems as they go on, and obviously experiencing certain systems at my current age makes me kind of look at like old models seem to be breaking like in real time in front of us in a lot of ways. And so like the paradigm shift of like what is the actual best, most beneficial thing to help people overcome those obstacles, right? Like I guess let me ask this question: like your guys' practice is primarily like cash pay. There's not like an insurance provider that covers your services, correct?
Yeah, it's pretty much cash pay right now, but I've worked really hard I never wanted somebody not to go through with because of time and also money. So I've worked hard to really give options for people to cut the cost in half.
Yeah.
So it is, initially with research, it's 5 sessions. And then people would either buy a package after that and share with their family or hop on a membership for a year. But I try to match it with just the efficacy of the work and what people have going on and what they're going back out into real life. And really the program, it's like I could talk to you guys like this because you're in health and wellness. You don't go work out 5 times and then quit, and like I said before, it's like if you got X, Y, and Z going on, everybody's brain's unique and different. I try to curtail it to what the person has going on. So I offer what they need to set them up for success that way. It's a 50-50 shot if HSA is going to cover it for people. I still have people pay on personal and then they kind of go back, but it is starting to become more recognized that way. But yeah, I am cash pay. So
I love this. I literally had this thought this morning about like what it means to kind of on the same line of think of like, yeah, you don't do 5 workouts and then call it a day and be like, oh, you mastered your health. It's like an ongoing hygiene thing.
Yes.
And it's also something that I was thinking about too is like everything is a stimulus to create an adaptation, right? Your brain will probably have certain stimuluses over time and it will create an adaptation and succumb to kind of like what you're giving it, right? The joke that I make here is like I make this joke, Marcos, and I know you probably heard it too, is like in the health world of like people struggling, they're like, man, my cortisol's all messed up. And then I joke like, well, you're the one that drank the coffee at the random time. Like you're blaming cortisol, but you're the person that's like, I like 5 p.m., like it's not necessarily cortisol's fault, but it's like how you're, I'm fine. He's fine.
I'm fine. My genetic profile said that I'm a moderate metabolizer of caffeine, so I'm doing it intentionally so I can stay up and not get bitched at by my wife because I'm falling asleep at 8:00 at
night. Dude, it's dark. It's dark in the west side. But no, like it's a stimulus, and I think like for the brain support, especially if you are, like you said, dealing with trauma, brain injuries. Like I think about this as like, for example, you deal with a lot of sports guys, but I like think about this probably in like the military setting. Another setting, Marcos and I in the longevity space, one of the things in the longevity that people deal with is like Alzheimer's, dementia. Like I wonder what it would do for that. Now, I know we're talking about like deficit states, like helping remedy deficit states. I do want to talk about like what if like you don't have a deficit state, but if you just want to like optimize your brain for, I don't know, I do a session and then like I read a book, but I can remember everything in the book. Is that like a thing that the protocol does, or is that something that like, is there like optimization flows with it?
Well, so you asked a few questions there.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. I'm like so excited about this topic.
But, removing, again, have I had people come to me that have Alzheimer's and dementia? For sure, or struggling with a lot of different things. I have to remove the symptoms or the diagnoses with that. Even though Cereset itself doesn't help, it doesn't treat, cure, heal, or diagnose those things. They would just use it for better stress and sleep regulation, somebody like that. And now it's not a matter about a result. So it's a matter about having them be balanced so that they can have a good quality of life and slow down the process, with their friends and family.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if your brain's in an under activated state, it's just going to exacerbate what's going on in your body. And then if you're not getting the good restorative sleep that you need, then your body's not healing itself. So that's where Cereset comes in for people like that, just stress and sleep regulation for sure. So what's kind of cool is there was 2 studies that came out, one in May of 2020 in Fort Bragg. It was for police officers and military, and they had them go through, and that's on the website. You could check it out. And they put people through a series of tests for better sleep and stress reduction and anxiety. And, and it came out in a high 85, 90 percentile, which was amazing of improvement. Recently, there was a study, it was actually a month ago. I think it was October 22nd. It just was posted as new research, but there was 144 health care workers that went through Saraset, out over 5 sessions at Wake Forest School of Medicine. And we asked them not to adjust their lifestyle. Now, here's the kicker. The model used to be where we ran them in a row. Now it's spaced out to where we saw no difference of improvement, whether we ran them 4 sessions in a row and a 21-day follow-up, or 5 sessions over 2 to 3 weeks, or 5 sessions over 5 weeks. Still, they reported back with all the improvements, mood that could show up like an anxiety, better sleep, stress regulation, high 85, 90% improvement for them. Ooh. Yeah. So much so that these guys wanted to incorporate it in their overall health, and just their overall health care. Yeah. And so it's pretty cool. And, the difference with what I'm doing, with the Cereset technology, it's pretty important to understand that it's really an inward-outward modality, where a lot of things out there are retrained from the outside in through stimulation. Cereset is retraining from the inside out, where the brain's there to do all the work and not through stimulation, just relaxation and through mirror.
It's not a passive modality. Yeah, can you break that down? Like how, I know you probably have to go through it, but like what is someone going through? I'm like so peaked now. Like
Yeah. So I would say in the short term, so it's HIREM, but it's high resolution relational resonance based, and then electroinfantselic mirroring. That's the technical term. Now, what is it? It's a non-invasive neurotechnology that uses auditory feedback to help the brain self-regulate through real-time feedback, right? Sound frequency. And so it's based with placing EEG sensors that read the brain at about 48,000 bits of information per second. So that would be 7 times of probably a Western Med EEG, I think, right now. So reads it at about 7. And then it reads your brain rhythms, and then through the hardware, takes those brain rhythms, and like English to French and French to English through the software and algorithms, it converts those into that acoustic mirror, or that auditory sound in 4 milliseconds right now. It keeps up with brain speed. And once the brain can see and hear itself, it knows how to do 3 things. It knows how to relax, rebalance, and reset itself from those stuck brain rhythms to help support overall brain function and health with no use of medication. I know, all organically. It's pretty awesome through quantum physics.
That's some wild stuff. Can you say that one more time? The brain has to hear, see, and feel itself?
No, it needs to see and hear itself in that mirror in order to relax, rebalance, and reset itself, just like quantum physics would, and so it's pretty awesome to have that real-time feedback in that modality. And I would say the program set up, the first 5 sessions typically will unstick the brain, and then the maintenance, people come back 1 to 2 times a month, depending on what they have, just the stresses and pressures that they have going back out in real life.
Yeah.
Just like it's like that that retainer they have to wear after they invest in braces, or else so their teeth doesn't go back to being crooked. It's like, and then with lifestyle adjustment, those action steps. And when I see those all match up and people get 15, 25 sessions in, whether it's an inch of difference or it's pretty life changing, I see probably 8 to 9 out of every 10 people see improvement in energy, mood, sleep, stress, and focus right now. That's a pretty high rate. Pretty awesome. Yeah, I know. And then people get through to, and I've had 10-year clients where they're feeling better. They're out living life again. It's so cool to see that in their face too, and have it match up. Or maybe, they're feeling better, but they still want to take it to another level with something else. And I have a lot of great resources outside of the office here, but they'll either continue on less frequently and just be proactive for their brain health, or have me as a resource to come back to after that. But going back to your other question, can I just come in for one session and optimize? Probably not. And the reason why I told you the whole healthcare worker, research is because it takes about 5 sessions for really the brain to really see itself and get moving. To even do that. One would kind of be like a Band-Aid, and even with, it's interesting, even with concussions, depending on how long they were. I mean, I see imbalances in ratio in the brain due to one reason or another, but they typically kind of present themselves after the 3rd session, depending on, and I've worked on, let's see, kids falling off trampolines, hitting their head, or all the way to NFL football players having 30 concussions, or MMA fighters, so,
Dang.
but, so one wouldn't, my whole point is one wouldn't be enough, but, yeah.
For wondering about this for my wife, where she deals with some. I mean, I feel like it's cycle related for her, but it does sound more like the stress culminates, and this is like a fight or flee or fight or flight kind of response, kind of there.
Yes.
And finding ways to help resolve that, because she's it works her up internally, that then leads to other kind of autonomic kind of triggers. And I'm is this a brain thing? And then I mean, it always, like Seamus says, kind of piques my interest. Is again, is there benefit of a balancing of the brain, right, and getting that kind of reset with it versus something else. She's again, she why do I feel like there's something wrong with me? I was because you want there to be, dang it, her brain keeps telling her there's something off, but there really isn't. She's how come you don't get any health anxiety? And I was I'm too worried about the money that has to pay for the health anxiety. For me.
Are you talking about more hormone related or things like that, or or in postpartum? I've worked with
it's not
women that suffer from some of those things for sure.
It's not a depression.
Yeah.
Right? So it's not that type of mood state. It's not a baby blues. It's not it's just there are triggers that then lead to, she just I can't describe it, but it feels like certain things, my wiring feels off. And that's just I feel off. That's it.
Yeah. Well, so I've had and I'll come back to this in a second, but I've had, a lot of people where obviously Cereset's helped outside of those 5 key categories. I just can't guarantee it again, because I have to hit home on I don't treat, cure, heal, or diagnose any symptom, illness, disease. I have to stay in my lane. I'm a health and wellness. I fall underneath wellness relaxation, but I have had clients report back, help with, migraines and neuropathy or tinnitus if it's stress induced, things like that. And I mean, I have literally a whole few clients where, postpartum, it's a real thing, and depending, and even for women that get up in their 40s and 50s and things like that, and they're looking for answers just to optimize, right? And they've tried the Western medicine route and they've got their blood work done, and then they're going to take the supplements, but they still feel like something's off. I have had clients come in here and say, hey, this has helped with hot flashes for me, but I can't guarantee that. I would tell
Yeah.
somebody, if they're going through that, even panic attacks for people for seeing trauma for one reason or another, I can't now somebody that runs in a severe fight or flight, a lot of adrenaline would probably have something like that where I've seen in the brain. But does this help relax that to help manage that for them? For sure. But I stay in my lane with stress, mood, energy, focus, sleep, all the 5 key categories. And then everything else, if that helps with that, it's a cherry on top.
Yeah.
That's the way I describe it. I said it can't hurt. It can't hurt you. It can only help you in one way or another. If you're only going through for these reasons, then that's cool. You're going to come out on top anyways, and figure out the other stuff. There's other resources for that. So outside of Cereset.
No, yeah, and I'm thinking this is more of like a trigger due to like however her body perceives stress, right?
Right.
That's more of like my inclination versus like sometimes the anxiety and stress that can culminate and lead to like the physical manifestation of things, right? Like shoot, I mean, plenty of individuals feel like I swear I got sick because I was stressed out of my mind, right, or whatever that was, right? So
Yeah.
dealing with things to balance maybe deeper root cause things related to those 5 key things you're mentioning could be a worthwhile endeavor for somebody that's like, oh, maybe there's something, is there, quote, I mean, how often do you hear someone say, like, I just feel like there's something off with me, or is there something wrong with me? They can't, like, point their finger to it, but you're like, hey, of these 5 things, which one do you feel like is most impactful to you? They're like, all right, like, 2 of them really ring home, and then they
Right.
let it go, right? And like you just said, it might be an ongoing kind of, starts out more frequently, because I feel like a lot of things kind of do that in the beginning, where there's more connection to that thing. It happens on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, and then it kind of goes monthly, and you slowly go in for tune-up sessions after kind of like the deeper work's done in the beginning, right? I'm assuming
Yeah.
that's kind of how
Yeah.
it's how a lot of things that are beneficial in this kind of therapeutic setting typically work, right?
Yeah, I would say so. And sometimes, there's only just so much time to address so many options. And then you get to the maintenance on the back end to address the other stuff, and you get after the first 5, some things are in process, some things need more work, or sometimes it's just a home run, which is fabulous. You always like that, like a walk-off grand slam, but yeah, I would say, with your wife, would it be more emotional or physiological, or I mean, could it be electrical? And so I always start with going back to childhood, and work my way up, because we are a creature of how our family raised us. They did the best jobs that we could, but there's always opportunities in everybody's brain, right? Yeah, and those are everybody's experience is different, and then you go join a life with somebody, and then there's other stressors. It doesn't have to be physical, emotional trauma. It could just be stress, running a family, running a business, things like that. So yeah.
It's funny you say that. Like, is it chemical? Is it emotional? I think people forget, like, it's kind of like what happened with electric cars. I think, like, back 80 years ago, like, electric cars could have been a thing, but then the gas companies were like, nah, like, we're running the show, and like electric cars kind of like didn't do it. And it was kind of almost the same with like pharmacologicals. Like, we just look at the human system as chemical, and it's like, all right, let's just throw like supplements and medication at it, and it's like, yo, y'all forgot we're also like electrical light beings too. That's why, like, red light therapy is becoming such a popular modality for some healing, and has like over 7,000 plus studies. And I like to use it. It just helps me wake up in the morning, or helps me feel energized, and all those things. But like, I think people forget that, like, hey, maybe this anxiety thing, using Marcos's wife as an example, hopefully Brittany don't kill me, but like, do we throw something at it? Do we do some talk therapy at it? Like, yeah, we could do all these things, but maybe there is a signaling, a pattern. I know, like, for example, Marcos, remember Adam, one of our homies, he has that newbie, the nervous system for the arm. And I felt like when he did that, my nervous system finally connected in my left arm from the pinky on up through like the bicep, through the pec, and then the trap. I had a lot of issues there. And I had like 2 sessions with him, and I was like, wow, I can finally feel this, because they're finally connecting. Not like the nerves were not necessarily working, but they probably just weren't firing correctly or in sequence correctly. And I think, like, sometimes the nervous system and the brain just doesn't have that signaling. And I think sometimes it just needs a little, like, tune up. Like, hey, get going.
Yeah.
Protection and like he's saying, deeper rooted traumas, the way the body and the mind will protect you from those instances, right? Like your electrical impulse issues dealing with like, your physical system, right? You had to unlock it, much like he's mentioning with the brain here. I feel like they are related in their own way. And yeah, it's funny you mentioned,
Well,
like my wife having some deeper things, and it's like I've known my wife since I've known my wife, right? I know about her past. I don't really dive into it because it's sometimes maybe a little bit of a sore subject, right?
yeah.
But
Well, I get that. We all come from it. I came from it as well. And so I always tell people, and this is doing a lot of work, because I've done a lot of work over the last 25 years, but you're not a prisoner of your past, you're a product of your past. You really are. You use it to give back to other people. That's why most people get in the helping profession, and things like that. And so I used to look at it at a different lens and stuff like that. Now I just look at it as I have more ammunition to help people,
I like that.
and but yeah, I would say another lens too to look at it as, not that it's every time, but sometimes, if people were already experiencing some of these things prior to 2020, and then they got COVID, and it really did impact everybody. And I'm still seeing the ramifications come through my office with that, yeah, just with how it dysregulated the brain and the nervous system. And for some people, if they struggle with like mood or being off or an anxiety or just something like that, or then it just made it worse. So I got that call today with somebody that had OCD, but it became worse after suspectedly, after COVID, so it's just idea to look at it through that lens too, but, I'm happy to help.
yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. Like,
Yeah.
I know there's a strong majority of people, or whatever that number might actually be, for how those years affected and impacted people. Like you just said, it may have led to triggering some other kind of compulsive disorder or whatnot.
Uh,
To me, I feel like it was like the opposite. Like as
yeah.
it sounds, it was like, I mean, I tried to look at it through the lens of like, this is we'll use the word they use. This is unprecedented. And to me, it was like an unprecedented and serendipitous time, because how often do you, a father that's supposed to be, worrying about like the income, get to be with your kid as much as you do and get to cherish these moments? So I tried to look at like the positives amidst the negative,
Yeah.
as more information. I mean, again, was I doing some like doom scrolling first thing in the morning to see like when the hell is this thing over? For sure, right? Like, checking out like refreshing the Chrome articles to kind of see, all right, I guess this shit done finally. Like, can we just like go on with our lives?
Have we lowered the curve yet? What the fuck?
But I can see how for other people, it could lead to more of that like depressive state, or I guess luckily for Seamus and myself, like we didn't lose our jobs during that time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It didn't, it did change how the work was done previously versus how it is now, right? But like that arc, it's
Yeah.
weird. It's weird because I look at that, when I first started my job, was it 18? Yeah, it was 2018. So I had like a real like year of like being in my position. And then people were like, "Don't you remember?" I was like, "No, dude, like I started and it was like basically a year, like 2 years into it, like we didn't go to work, or it was this unprecedented time. Like the way that we would see the typical volume of people coming through our doors wasn't the norm anymore, and now it's turned into this new norm, and then pivots and all these things. So the ideas behind how the brain anticipates those things, and like you're saying, how everybody else will have their own kind of response to it, is super. It's fascinating to me because as an individual that is more X's and O's, more logical based thinking, and not that my wife kind of like is like, how come you have like no emotion outside of like when you watch like a sappy story on American Idol or something like that? I was like, because the music. It's because the music in the background is triggering an emotional, a visceral response.
He needs something else to hit. He needs like the sad music, and then the
Yeah, well, I try not to think of like there's sadness happening to me, and it's like, oh man, that thing sucks. I would hate for that to happen to me. But I guess too, like everybody's genetic makeup or how their brains are aligned, right, and how they have to go about it is different. And by no means am I saying that I'm better than people that, because I don't have to deal with that. I've dealt with my own shit, right? It's just that lately, as I look at, other things that have happened, being able to get those things aligned, I'm like, I don't know. I don't know how much that, your services would benefit me personally. Maybe they do. Maybe
Yeah.
I'm actually in misalignment, and being misaligned is actually a good thing for me. Fuck, I know.
Well, so I've had some of those clients come through my door and they say I'm not stressed out too.
Yeah.
And, but then the graphs say otherwise, and so the graphs never lie, and that's just reading the brain in real time, whether it's imbalanced in ratio or an actual balance, on those graphs. But what I would say is some people just get used to living in a certain state because they've had so much coming at them that they don't know any difference.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know what it's like to have a balanced brain until they actually sit in the chair and relax. And then they're like, oh my gosh,
Yeah, you told me this in 50 minutes. I
yeah.
get more
They're
stressed.
like, yeah, yeah. Like talking about like my wife, for instance, she works in sales, she never knew that she needed the services until she actually sat in the chair. Now she's like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. It really helps me do my job. There's just so much to deal with on the day-to-days. That's just a regular business professional, no trauma, no concussions, but using to optimize. So it can go multiple ways.
That's what I was. Maybe for us guys like Marcus, there's like maybe like just take blank slate, no trauma, just busy professional. Like
Yep.
that was kind of like what my question was. Like if I do a sesh, maybe 5 sessions, and then just do it to just kind of like mental hygiene, brain hygiene, like do it once a month or whatever.
Yeah.
Am I getting better like BDNF, brain derived neurotropic factor? Am I getting more plasticity so that like when I go to work, like I'm engaged in my work? Yeah, I can
Yeah.
read that book and I can retain that book even better. Like, is that like a proposed promise, or like is that something you see like,
Yeah.
or is it just putting you in a better state that can handle more load? Not saying like, hey, you're
Well,
gonna get an IQ score that's gonna make you Mensa. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I definitely, let's put it this way. It can't hurt and it can only help you. And I would know more after the graphs on your first session. I definitely would know more, have a full history after the third session, because then I can see the brain in a full, I've placed on all 8 different lobes of your brain. So for sure. And to my whole point, as Cereset has developed, over the last 20 years, and that just the technology and gotten better, I really am educating people to be more proactive for their brain health. That's the key instead of reactive, because if everything does really begin with your brain and your thoughts and your emotions, your actions, it's just going to help everything else that you're doing for your body. That's
yeah,
really the takeaway. And it's going to help. I mean, you're going to age more gracefully. Who doesn't want to age more gracefully? And if you really look at the research, and if Saraset is about releasing stuck stress to support overall brain function and health, and just recovering from that, and you look at the high rates of what disease comes from and what sleep issues come from, it's really stress. So accumulated stress, the more you can manage your stress in your life, and where's stress regulated from? Your brain.
yeah,
It's going to just help everything else in your life. So, yep.
yeah.
So I would say,
Resolving that stress, going
yeah,
through a recovery cycle with it. Yeah,
yeah,
I think that's the thing is like don't avoid stress per se. It's about having, again, back to a stimulus, having a good stressful stimulus that you can
yeah,
recover from. If you can't recover from it, obviously that's where it probably was a trauma, emotional, physical. Maybe it wasn't metabolized appropriately within your own psyche and your own thing, and it's like maybe you got to do some work, whether that be talk therapy and medication. But now we have these other modalities, and I think that's the thing. I think like one thing I've been learning in regulating myself, I've been doing a lot of work, and a lot of my stuff's like I think more like not brain, but like the first brain, technically the gut. Technically, that's the enteric nervous system is like the first brain, technically. But I'm working a lot on the gut, and like I feel like by working on my gut, I'm like way more happy, way more like way more relaxed, way more calm. And I'm like, I know that there's obviously we know that there's a relationship there, but it's like, yeah, I think with the Sarah
total
set, you can
connection.
really work on it, you know.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, trust your gut. But
Trust the gut.
uh, I feel like Seamus, what you were asking was like the biohacker's guide to using.
Yeah.
Like that was
like, can I get into a flow state, like, like
Yeah.
knock out 12 hours of deep work and become like what's that movie Limitless? Like fucking just so.
I can't promise that, but it's definitely going to add more bandwidth to your health,
Okay.
overall health. Yeah. And really, it's ideally, how can I, because many people run at depleted states where they're taking withdrawals from their bank account. I use it like that, in their life, depending on where they spend their time and their resources and their energy. And, and so Cereset's adding deposits back into your bank account so you can show up more effectively in your day-to-day life and accomplish things. And I use this analogy. I'm like, when you're running at a depleted state and your brain's stuck, it's like, you ever see that detour off the freeway where you're driving on the freeway and then you got to go like side streets and it's taking you 3 and 4 times as long to get somewhere or accomplish something? That's a stuck brain. That is a stuck brain. And then where Cereset comes in and mirrors it back to balance to help it gain its flexibility, that's a brain that you're driving on the freeway going 65 miles an hour with no traffic. It's like, sign me up, sign me up, and my experience is people either pay for it on the front end and their how they show up with their relationships and their business and what they spend their money on, or they pay for it on the back end. They pay for it either which way. So I would just be proactive for your brain health, so that you can use the services and optimize. Even if you don't have trauma, physical trauma, emotional trauma, Cereset can definitely be used as a resource that could be for anybody to get help these days. Yep.
Well, as we kind of wind this down, I do have a question about. So you mentioned this has been around for how long again?
So probably about, I'd say 20 years. We just go with that. Started off with brainwave optimization and about a 15-hour process. And then in 2018, it moved to a franchise model across the U.S. And today there's internationally 63 locations. So I've been in business 17 years. Cereset Costa Mesa, doing this for about 10, and now walking as the owner for about 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
In your opinion, in terms of like what Shane was mentioning for the benefit of the brain being balanced here, for like again the age related decline that people would see, what does your gut tell you? What is your readings as a practitioner for almost 2 decades at this point?
What's the question? I'm so sorry.
In terms of like it's not long enough around to like see people through it for multiple decades, like as they've gone through like an aging process, right? Like fully, right? Like in terms of like longevity space, like in your with your best guess, do you feel as though this as a way to help stave off like age related decline of the brain, that this will be something that will be included,
Oh, I mean, and the time that I've been here, it's already improved so much. I don't see it not. I do think it will be as a tool. There's so much, like you said in the beginning, we don't know about the brain, but I do know after thousands of scans that I've done that 15 to 25 sessions, typically, whether it's an inch of difference or a major improvement in energy, mood, sleep, stress, and focus, people do typically feel better, whether I'm the missing link or it is a collective effort to what they're doing out there. So I do foresee this even getting better. I don't know what that looks like in the future,
I
but I'm
wanted to ask you,
definitely, but I am grateful just to walk alongside of so many people where they come into my office and, these are extreme cases that just death is on their face. And then it's just such an honor to walk alongside of them. And now they're walking out of my office feeling a little bit better, having a little bit more joy or hope in their life. It's pretty rewarding, pretty priceless. Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate. I wanted to ask you, like, with the onset of technology, new things like paradigm shifts happening so much. Like now there's 63 locations, international or nationally, internationally. Like, is there a way that like this brain mirroring technology will become more like at home? Like, is that something that becomes a possibility where people can just kind of do this, where they can handle it on their own, or like what's the
Yeah.
parameters around that?
Yeah. I mean, the short version is that's already been tried on the old model and part of the new model, and that was prior to COVID. And I would say, with the feedback that we got and how the improvements are, um you know it that is no longer, I think, when you're looking at somebody with trauma and concussions in the brain, there's only so much you can do with an at-home device. It's like the analogy that I draw. It's like you got a 64-bit computer and then you got a tablet. It's like chopping through wood or cement through trauma or concussions. You know what I mean? It's a very, very, very different. And so people, would probably rather come in and get reset and do that once a month versus where home unit at home every night, for 10 or 20 minutes. And plus it covers more ground in the office. So that's no longer that ended. That trial ended, I think, closer to 2018. And so for the last 7 years, it's just an in-office modality. But, who knows in the future, where Saraset can go. I'm just think it'll keep on getting better and better.
Yeah. Marcus, you want to close this out, my man?
I'm trying to think of another question to end it. Well,
how did I become bald? No. I'm just kidding.
Too many brain meetings.
I'm just kidding.
I guess my last question would be about like the waves that are being read on the report. Like you're mentioning
Yeah.
balance with it. I hear a lot of people that are talking about like brain symmetry and the relationship of these waves. So maybe we probably should have asked this earlier, but my own selfish understanding, proper balances of these different waves the brain is producing. What does that look like, and what kind of relationship should people kind of key in on?
Yeah. I always say, because I don't want people to get so stuck on the graphs. It's great when the subjective feedback and the graphs match up. The graphs are just a tool. I've had it where like Cereset has done its job but somebody still has other things going on in their body, and that's going to be for a therapist or like a doctor outside of Cereset, but I really bring them through on the initial intake to set the expectation. It is always great when that matches up, but I also don't want them to get so stuck on the graphs. It's good information on where their brain's at in present time. And it just shows imbalances. I have bar graphs and line graphs and all the tools there. And I really do try to customize it and make it relatable to what's going on in somebody's brain so that they can understand, why what they feeling is really real, and it really, so they can identify with it. And it's such a great thing to be able to do that and use that as a tool to really help people and be like, there is hope. There really is hope. This is your brain. The technology will do its job. You just got to trust the process and do your own work, your own action steps. That's a life work. We're all work in progress, and the brain can come back into balance. But to answer your question more on a scientific word, like term, like the brain is read at a Hertz level, and I'm looking at balance, whether it's 10% left or 10% right, and then I want it to land more near the green lines. That's a balanced brain, like a healthy rest or digest, or a line graph. We have high and low frequencies in our brain, and I want them no more than 1.5 times the ratio in the front part of the brain. That's a balanced brain for me. When I see imbalances, balance, or ratio differences for people, that can be more challenging. It's no different than the analogy I draw. It's like taking, again, a brain stuck. It's taking side streets to get 3 and 4 times to accomplish something or do something, depending on what lobe it is. The frontal lobe's all your executive functioning, your learning, planning, reason, decision-making, impulse control. Your temporal lobe's all stress and sleep and auditory perception, the language center of the brain, hearing words and understanding and thinking and speaking. And then you got your frontal pulse. That's how you process emotionally, and walking in hard on self, shame, guilt, and grief, or even anger, frustration, and irritation. depending on if you've lived in a super hypervigilant world, like things like that. I mean, I could keep on going back and back to the back part of the brain, but we won't do that. But typically, I see imbalances in ratio, and the Cereset technology it's like the simplified terms, it's a brain massage to help you gain your flexibility back. It's non-invasive, all organic, no stimulus, no medication, no outside intervention. It's so great. You're just in a comfortable zero gravity chair in a dim, dark room, and anybody can take advantage of it, whether you've had trauma and concussions or you just you're the business professional and you want to stay ahead of the curve and optimize. So it's all good. Yeah.
This is just a reminder for those listening, like, guys, the brain is like a knuckle piece of tissue stuck in between, like encapsulated in a dark vacuum. It's never seen light. It's never, experienced wind. It's only experiencing the senses that we give it from the different things. So it's like, sometimes you get it's gotta just train it up a little bit. So no, this is awesome. No, this is great. Christopher, thank you so much for being on. I honestly felt like I was like going in places. I like could keep talking about this more because like I'm gonna nerd out and like I want to like go deep, and like I'm a person that likes to kind of like Marcus said, like biohack it. Like, oh, what if I try this out like a few times and like see what happens with me? Like, and I'm not coming from a place of major deficit, but maybe there are some few things that'll help kind of unlock and open up. But definitely for someone that's dealt with trauma, cognitive, just like all these things. Yeah, it could be the missing piece, could be the last piece, and it could be something that's there. And there's 63 places, so that's awesome. And I think with the paradigm shift post COVID and just with this new world of artificial intelligence, I think people are looking for different solutions as opposed to old models. I think these models are being inverted. They're being inverted right in front of us, right? You see it in social media, you see it in the news, you see it in how the dynamics are changing. So I think more people are like, we're kind of like in a flux. More people are looking for different things now. And I think more people are going to come your way. I know I'm for sure coming. I come down to Costa Mesa. I mean, my wife and they are probably there in a few weeks. So I'll probably come through.
Well, I'd be honored to help you guys any way I can. Seriously. And I'm sure we'll be chatting. So appreciate you guys and the opportunity just to share on brain health. And yeah, wishing you all the best, man.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Peeps, give us a like, give us a follow, give us a share, give us a something. The more engagement, the better. We appreciate everybody that's listened to all the episodes that we've had. Not sure if this is at 200, Seamus, or where we're at, because
I think we're gonna drop a special episode, but this is around 200, by the way, Christopher. Like, this is it.
Yeah, but again, if you're looking to kind of maximize your experience and see if there are ways to improve your brain health through a non-invasive way, and see if like relaxing it can help you kind of open up and allow your body to do some things a little bit different from a non-traditional lens, I feel like this is a great option. Hey, if you're a listener in Las Vegas, they actually have a Saraset here as well. A fun fact, I looked it up because I like to I get sidetracked a little bit, and like I'm like, okay, like, oh yeah, they do have and I know there's obviously, like you said, 63 locations. It looks like primarily in the States. It looks like there's only a handful of other ones across the other parts of the world. So primarily, if you're probably in the U.S., and I know that most of our listeners are, this could be an option for you to kind of look into something there. And obviously, call, get in there, kind of see what the care plan could look like in terms of what Chris and his team and other members of their particular practices are utilizing there. Because I think it's a great way of trying to maximize health in a non-traditional way, which is what we're all about here at the Macro Perspective, giving you big picture overview of many different views of the world. And with that, I bid you adieu. Good night, everybody, and we'll see you next time.